So you never know when God's going to give you a message, when God's going to speak to you. You're going to get a word of encouragement. And if you preach for a living, or if you're an elder or been a Christian a long time, you really want to be the one that's going around encouraging everyone. But every once in a while, God just speaks into your life. So I was in the Detroit area back in November. I think it was November. At some point, I'm old, I forget. I was in this area, and I was over at the Metro Church at Sterling Heights. Peter's coaching me because he knows where I was better than I do, but yeah. And so the preacher there is Donald Eason. Some of you may know Donald. And so when we kind of finished up an event very similar to this, we went out to eat, and we were visiting with each other about what God was doing and what God could do and how things were going to happen. And as we were visiting, we were kind of winding up, and there was a very sweet young couple, at least to me they were kids. Very young couple got up and came over and said, are you Christians? Yes, we are. And so we visited a minute, and they told us a little of their story, what God was doing. Life had been a little tough, and how God was bringing them back, and God was restoring them, and what a great thing God was doing in life. And I really don't remember if we did it with them or right after they left or the next morning at breakfast. But we started praying for that little couple, that young couple. And so yesterday, Donald came over, and we had coffee yesterday afternoon. And so we were talking about the things God has done, and we talked about our Carrabba's couple, because the Carrabba's is where we met them. And we were talking about how much it meant and wondering how they were doing, and said, boy, that was just a shot in the arm for us, and how much that meant to us. And so this morning after Bible class, I see this young woman come up, and I thought, boy, she looks familiar, but I preach all over. You know, I see, and some of y'all have twins around the world, because you told me you've never met me, but you look like somebody I know. So, and then she said, I'm your Carrabba's girl, and she is here this morning. You don't have to wave. I don't want to humiliate you, but she's right there. And you need to know, she witnessed to Donald and I. She shared the testimony of what God was doing in their life with Donald and I. And it mattered. I mean, you're like, well, however long it's been since November, we're still talking about that. Still talking about y'all. So tell hubby I hope he comes to hear me one night, because I want to see him too. I got to hug you, I want to hug him too. So there you go. So at Hillcrest in Abilene, Hillcrest Church of Christ in Abilene, where I'm on staff as I don't have a title, minister. My job, literally, I told some of you, and everybody says, no, really, what is your job? The elders had told me my job description is literally this: talk about Jesus. That's my job description. When I say, no, really, what do you want me to do? They say, talk about Jesus. And so we do. And so we got very intentional praying about God sending us people that don't know Jesus. Much like our prayer this morning, we all prayed together that God will send us non-believers. We want people to come find out about Jesus. And so our elders made a couple of strategic decisions. Now, ministers get this, preachers get this. The larger the church, the more they want big classes, big church, and they're featured speakers, so to speak, to teach all those. And so at Hillcrest for about a year, Nathan Burr, our preacher, taught the big adult class on Sunday morning. And I taught our big class on Wednesday night. And our elders made a decision just about a year ago, and they told the congregation, Nathan's not going to teach anymore in our big adult class on Sunday morning. We're going to let him start a seekers class for people that come to church, want to know more. We do worship first, then class. So if people that come to worship want to know more, we're going to invite them to a seeker class, little class about 20 people. Love that for our elders. And then they said, Steve's not teaching on Wednesday night. Oh, and they also said, and don't go ask Steve because he's going to be helping Nathan. Then they said, don't ask Steve to teach you more on Wednesday nights in the big class. He's going to start a class for non-believers on Wednesday night. And don't ask Nathan to do it because he's going to help Steve. And so we called our class the Jesus Journey class. And it is a class designed for people who want to know, what would it look like if I wanted to follow Jesus? And it's a class for people like, I'm really interested, how would I get on my journey? How would I start my journey? How would I stay on my journey? or what we're finding a lot of lately, how would I come back to my journey with Jesus? And so about twice a year, we take all the people we've kind of gathered up, people that have visited for one reason or another, people that have kind of stuck their head in class a time or two, friends of people, and we throw a dinner for them, and we do about 10 minutes. I'm not going to be that quick this morning. We do about a 10-minute story about the Jesus journey. And so this morning, I'm going to share with you the story. You heard it read for you just a moment ago. We're going to share with you the story that we tell all of our people that are curious about Jesus. What it looks like to follow him, how would you start, how would you come back, those kind of things. And we, about twice a year, we tell this story to probably 30 or 40 non-believers who have had interest of some kind. Now, by the way, I don't know what you do up here in Texas. We do Chick-fil-A for our big dinners because, one, they're cheap. In Abilene, the people that own the Chick-fil-A close to Hillcrest are believers, and so they give us what I think is a really good discount. And besides that, they give my wife and I lots of little free coupons because we order it. So it's really a pretty cool deal for us. Except my wife, I try to get them first. She gives them out to all the people there. I try to save them for our grandkids, so we fight over the coupons. So here is the story. You heard it read. You can find this story in Mark, the 10th chapter, starting in verse 46. If you're going like, well, okay, I've got a Bible here. If you don't have a Bible, talk to one of us. We'll get you a Bible. And if you say, but how would I find that story? Okay, it's like every book ever done. In the Bible, there will be a thing in the front called the table of, and you know what you look for if you're trying to find the book of Mark? Look for Mark. And when you find it, you go to that page. Well, you said Mark 10. Okay, that's the chapter. That's those big black numbers in the Bible. So if I tell you go to Mark 10, you're looking at the table of contents, find Mark, go to the page number, start flipping through it, you find the big black 10. And then the little black numbers are the verses. So if I say start looking around verse 45 or 46, you will find this story. And so that's how you look up things in the Bible. And so I'm just going to kind of talk you through it. We read it. You can read it again for yourself. But I'm going to talk you through that story a little bit and what it might mean for us today. Jesus is leaving with a group of people. Now, people are always around Jesus. But when you read this story, you'll see there were two kinds of people walking with Jesus. There were his disciples, and then there was a large crowd or a large multitude. You know, hanging around Jesus is not the same as being a follower of Jesus. My mother-in-law used to always say, sitting in the hen house don't make you a chicken, and sitting in the church house doesn't make you a Christian. And sometimes we kind of think it does. If I just kind of be part of the group around Jesus, that's enough. But there's a difference between being a disciple, a follower of Jesus, and being in the crowd around Jesus. The first thing you've got to start figuring out for your life, do I want to be a disciple of Jesus, a follower of Jesus? Do I want to be bought in all the way, whatever it takes to go wherever Jesus leads me? Or am I going to be content to be one of the hangers around Jesus? One of the, there's lots of ways you talk about people, but, preachers have all kinds of phrases for people that, it's like, okay, here, for instance, do you know what a CEO Christian is? Christmas, Easter only. I know y'all don't have any of those here, but, in Texas, we got a lot of those. They're like, boy, I've been here 50 years. Well, me too. I don't know you, but they like to be in the crowd around. You know what the crowd does? The crowd shows up at church some. If you know the song, you may sing a little, or you'll kind of listen. If the song leader's pretty good and you're around people, you might or you might not sing. You might once in a while write a little check to church. I mean, you try to be a pretty good person. You don't want to do anything too bad, but and you try to do, generally pretty good. That's part of the crowd around Jesus. And Jesus is saying, no, I'm calling you to be my follower, my disciple. I want you to be like me in this world that I died for. So the first thing you got to start processing, are you happy being in the crowd? Because if you're here this morning, you've already passed that bar. You're in the crowd. Second thing you got to decide is, do I want to take that further and be a follower, a disciple, a real as in Christ follower. And the other character in this, they're coming down the road and there's a beggar. Blind beggar named Bartimaeus, named for his father, the son of Timaeus. And so he's a blind beggar. A couple of things had to have happened. One is he has either learned how to get up, fumble his way around wherever he lives, probably not anything extravagant, put on some clothes, or somebody has to come and help him dress every day. And to make a living, to be able to buy food or pay rent or whatever he's got on his budget, his agenda, his life, he has to go to this place or be led to this place. And typically they want to be by a road where there's a lot of traffic coming by, people walking by. And so he's either learned how to walk or somebody goes and places him and he sits. You know what he does all day? Help, blind here, can you help me? Please give me something. And because he's blind, if he hears anything drop, whether he's got something to put it in or it drops at his feet, he doesn't even know what it is. He just hopes that it's enough to make it through to the next day. That's a hard life. You know, I'm going to tell you there's a lot of people that are beggars in this world. Some know it and some don't. There are a lot of physical beggars. I've never been anywhere in the world, including right here in the United States, where I do not see all the time people who are begging, people who are desperate. One of our recent couples that we talked to about Jesus, and we baptized them. And it was interesting because that's when our church learned that in Texas, if you're released from prison, you're on probation and have an ankle bracelet. I knew that you could shower in them. I did not know if you could stand in water. You know how we found out you can, that ankle bracelets are waterproof? We had to call the Texas Department of Corrections and say, we want to baptize a guy with an ankle bracelet. Can we take it off? And they said, don't need to. He can stand in the water. He has since baptized a couple of people, including his now wife. But we had them over to eat. My wife said, let's have them over. And it actually kind of started because they became Christians and said, hey, we're living together. We think we probably shouldn't. Can we get married? We said, yeah, it'd be great. And then she said this to my wife. We don't know what that means. How do you get married? What do you do? And so our church threw a wedding for Joseph and Angela. It was great. Man, we bought the wedding, we went wedding dress shopping. We put a reception together. I gave her away on behalf of her church family. Nathan did the ceremony. We had one of our members take pictures and put them in a picture book form. It was great. It was fantastic. It was wonderful. But when we're getting ready to plan it, my wife said, let's have them over to eat. Great. Preacher's wife came over. Joseph and Angela came over. We're sitting there. And Angela starts tearing up. So my wife says, you okay? And she said, I was just thinking, we've been together for years now, and we have never sat down in a house and had a home-cooked meal. Never. Not one. So there are people around us everywhere that function in ways some of us just don't get. And you know, there's lots of ways to be a beggar. You know that, right? You ever been in the hospital and watched people beg for healing, beg for the right diagnosis, cry because they're afraid of what's coming next when they do get the diagnosis? People who beg for God to spare their loved one when he's laying in hospice. Emotional beggars. Lots of beggars who would give anything to have a friend, who would love to have somebody that cared about them, who would love to have somebody that said, how are you doing? How was this week? What's going on next week? How's your mom? Hey, what happened to that puppy you got? Anything that said, I know you, I care about you, how are you? You know, kind of like what we've done all morning this morning with each other. They would beg for somebody to care about them. And of course, there are people they're spiritually bankrupt, and they're beggars spiritually. Boy, they know life's got to be better. They know that what they're doing is not healthy and not good, but they don't have a clue how to make life better. I don't know how to stop my addictions. I know I shouldn't do this, but boy, when stress level turns up, this is the only way I know to cope, and I don't know how to give anything for somebody to coach them on how to find a life that had, maybe hope or joy or purpose or peace. People who every day It's a battle to survive. Okay, in Bartimaeus' case, it's physical because he's a blind beggar. And he hears that it's Jesus coming down the road. Now, I don't know how much he knows about Jesus, but he knows something about Jesus, because when he hears it's Jesus, he starts yelling, "Hey, here, have mercy on me, help me, here." I'm going to tell you, in your world, there are people who are desperately screaming for Jesus. Some of them don't even know what to call him. They just know there's got to be a better life, and they are desperate. They would do anything to have what we see all the time. Desperate for Jesus, desperate for community, desperate for a life of some kind of peace, some kind of purpose, to know that they are here for something better than what they see. And so they sometimes look for, well, if they wanted to find Jesus, all they got to do is come. I mean, we're here every Sunday. Yeah, we're going to talk one night this week about the people that never have been and try to visit church. Man, when do you sit down? When do you stand up? What are you doing? Now, I can tell you this, most of you will get this. You heard about the little boy that went to church, got invited, went to church, came home, his mom said, "Hey, how'd you like church?" He said, "Hated it, never going back." Oh, okay, what happened? Well, they kept talking about we were going to eat, we were going to have supper together, and then we did, and they gave me this little sip of grape juice and a little tiny cracker, and then they tried to charge me for it. Okay, he really didn't get church, did he? But you know what? If you didn't grow up in church, you remember when you started coming to church? You didn't get it. I don't know, man, they're drowning some guy one Sunday, and then they're talking about all this body and blood, and look, I don't know what that is, and man, what is all this stuff? And I wish it's easy for us to say, let's just build it, and they will come. Except it doesn't work that way. And most of you didn't just wake up one day in your life and say, I think I want to know about Jesus. Let me find a church. Most of you had somebody who cared enough about you, whether it was your parents, your mate, your friend, your coworker, might have been a preacher, who said, would you like to know more? Would you like to come? How about can we talk about, can I share with you what Jesus has done? Would you like to come too? And you did, and had somebody there to walk with you. Well, Bartimaeus hadn't got that, so he's just yelling, Jesus, here I am. And here's how, you know what everybody around him started doing? Go back and read that story. Shh, hey, don't do that. Don't be like that. You ever seen anybody that didn't know how to act in church? Now, some of you are thinking, yeah, I bet when you grew up. Yeah, but I'm not talking about that. But yes, that's right. I didn't grow up in church. I was yanked up. But, they don't know the songs. They sing when everybody else is quiet, or they don't know, they don't get it, and they're kind of embarrassing because you're trying to do something. You're trying to do communion, and they're going, what is that? What is it? Do I take that? Who can take that? Why do I do this? How do you open it? Wow. I mean, everybody knows, don't they? Why are we singing? What are the words? When do I sing? What do I do? Or you ever had anybody in your assembly who is so convicted about Jesus, they yell out in the middle of the assembly, this is great! Shh, we don't do that here. You have to be, we're in church and God has saved us and we're really happy about it, so act like this. I told him yesterday, we got to quit acting like we've been baptized in pickle juice. Man, we do. God sent his son to die for you, and you believed it, and you were born again with him, and you are going to live forever. And that is celebration news. And there are people that want that. Somebody said, well, we'd never just tell you. I mean, they were telling you to be quiet. We wouldn't be that rude, wouldn't we? There are lots of ways to discourage somebody from following Jesus. Guy goes to work. He visits church. You didn't see him, but he recognized you, and he sees you the next day at work. And he starts over to say, hey, I was at your church. And you're telling a dirty joke. Or you're flirting with a secretary. Or you're saying to everybody, I turned in padded the old expense account a little bit, made me an extra $30 this week. You know what you just said to him? Shut up, be quiet, quit yelling for Jesus. You did. That's what you just said to him. They finally get the nerve, and somebody invited them. They show up at church. And everybody looks at him and says, wonder who that is. Nobody talks to him. Nobody invites him to sit with them. Nobody says, hey, you want to go to lunch today? Nobody. You know what you just said to him? Be quiet. Quit hollering for Jesus. Desperate people. And we discourage them. Man, we don't want to be those people. Sometimes we do it consciously. Sometimes we do it subconsciously. The guy visits, he sits down, and somebody comes up and very lovingly says, you're in my pew. I'm sorry, are there names somewhere? Did I miss that? Where's the name for the guy that's not coming back? Where's his pew? Because I'm not coming back here. There's lots of ways you can discourage people besides just saying, be quiet, sit down. Because, you know, some people are so excited when they find out the good news of Jesus, they want to jump up and shout. This is great. This is fantastic. You ever known hand holders, ameners, hallelujahs? You're going, yeah, well, I met you, so of course I do. Yeah, I like that. We need more of those. We do. And we don't need to be the ones saying, we don't act like that here. Really? The question is not why are they acting that way. You know what the real question is? Why aren't we? Why aren't we more enthusiastic about Jesus? Greatest news ever. So, Bartimaeus says, they're telling him, shh, be quiet. Basically, they're telling him, shut up. We don't act that way. And then Jesus stops and says, hey, bring him to me. Wow. Please hear this. In our world that's full of evil and pain and sin and hurt and abuse and prejudice and all the stuff in our world that we hate, the enemy in all that is not the people doing that. It is the devil. The people who are living in sin, but for the grace of God, they are us. They are. They are people God made. They are people Jesus died for. They are people that, well, they can be us if they find out about Jesus. They can. And so Jesus, into this world, calls everybody to him. The drug addict on the corner, Jesus died for him. The rich executive who's abusing all his workers, Jesus died for him. The guy who's running around his wife, Jesus died for him. Wife that slapped her kid yesterday, Jesus died for her. All in this world, just like he died for us. And of course, when Jesus says, hey, bring him here, you know what happens then? Hey, get up. He's calling for you. Let me help you. I hope it wasn't the same people. I've always worried about that a little bit. Hey, sure, we don't act like, oh, hey, Jesus does want you. Let me help. You know, you're also a cheerleader for the people finding Jesus. You know that, right? When you go over to that guy that visits church and says, hey, I'm Steve. Who are you? Glad to see you. Have you been here before? Hey, my wife and I are going to lunch. You want to come with us? Depends on how many she invites. We either take them to McDonald's or somewhere. No. Come with us. Glad to see you. What can I do to help you? Would you like to know about Jesus? There are a million ways to greet someone. And when they look and they're confused, to lean over and say, hey, here's what we do and here's why we do that. But you can't talk like that. You can't talk in church, can you? Yeah, I do. I do for the people that don't know. That don't know. Of course I do. Just like you do when your grandkids says, what are we doing? Okay, I'll tell you later. Or here it is, and then okay. But a visitor, we're like, ooh, they shouldn't ask that. Well, maybe they should ask that. Maybe they should, and maybe we should answer them. Or say, here, let me help you out. Let's talk more afterward about. I know there are lots of ways to encourage, to meet. Man, be a greeter, be a prayer for people. When they say, can I pray for you? Pray for them. Find yourself 4 months later talking about how much they encouraged you. There are a million ways to greet people, encourage people, help people, tell people Jesus is calling you. Let me help you find him. But what do I say? Well, one, you can tell them about you and Jesus. That's a great way. When they say, I don't know about this whole Jesus thing. Let me tell you what Jesus has done for me. Well, I don't know. Steve, I'm not always Jesus-y out in the world like I should be. You know, it's okay to say to somebody, I'm not perfect, but I'm forgiven. And if you think I'm not perfect now, you should have known me before Jesus. Because, most of us, without Jesus, I don't know, I'd be dead. I don't know what the rest of you would be. And so he goes to Jesus. And Jesus looks at him and says, okay, what do you want? What do you want? How do you answer that? Well, I would say, Jesus, I just want to go to heaven. I just want to be like you. I know all the answers we know. But in the moment when Jesus says, what do you want? And you just blurt it out. And we talk to people and say, how can we help you? They don't talk about Jesus. They say, I need groceries. I need food. I want a job. I don't have transportation. I'm sick. Okay. You know what? God calls us to minister to them. Well, you can't help everybody. Yeah, you can. Sure you can. Well, we don't have enough. Just start asking God to give you more then. Let's don't be the excuse makers why we can't help people get to Jesus. What do you want? And the guy just blurts out what's on his mind. I want to see. I'm blind. Of course, here's what I want. You heard the story that I tell this one a lot, that I pray is always, it's a preacher story. It's got to be a preacher story. This cannot be true. But the ladies in the ladies' class at church decided they wanted to go to the single mom a block down the road and tell her about Jesus. It's great. So they all showed up, knocked on the door. She didn't answer. The door's kind of cracked. They kind of opened it. Man, there's dirty clothes on the floor, and there's kids walking around in dirty diapers, and they're crying. Sinks full of dirty dishes. They hear a voice from the back, real faint. They go back, and she's laying in bed, and they said, I don't know what's the matter. I don't know if she's not working. She's sleeping. Maybe she's drunk. I don't know. What's the matter? He says, I'm really sick, and I can't get up. Well, what did the doctor say? I don't have transportation to the doctor, and I don't have the money for a doctor visit. I can tell we came at a bad time. We'll be back when you feel better and talk about Jesus. You clean up the living room, you bring food, you get her a doctor's appointment, you take her to the doctor, you pay for it, you buy her medicine, and then you say, we did this because Jesus has been good to us. Can we come back when you feel better and tell you why we do this? There's a million ways when somebody says, here's what I want, to say, let me help you with that. What we can do, we will do. We will do what we can for who we can whenever we can. In the name of Jesus. And it matters. And so when he says that, Jesus says, okay, good. Hey, you got faith. Your faith has healed you. You can see. And he could. And Jesus said, go. Your faith healed you. And he didn't go. That's the greatest thing in this story. He didn't leave Jesus. He followed Jesus down the road. And when we talk to people about the Jesus journey in this life, you know where the Jesus journey ended in this life? At the cross, where he died for our sins. If you follow Jesus, you always get to the cross. You know what baptism is? It's when we're crucified with Christ. It's when we die with Jesus and are raised to a new life. That's the call we do. And of course, you know where the journey for Jesus ultimately ends up. Around the throne of God. So I don't know everybody here. I've met a lot of you and talked to some of you. And man, I love you and I'm glad I'm here. And I hope my wife gets to come meet you someday. If not, you'll see her in heaven and we'll all hang out and talk about this. But if you're here this morning and you just came because you're kind of curious about the Jesus thing, you've never bought in, never committed to it, I'm going to tell you, there's not a greater day than today to say, I'm in. What? Help me. Man, we'd love to help you be born again today. We'd love to say, let's talk about Jesus. Here's what he has done for me. Here's what he can do for you. Here's how it looks to follow him. We would love to have that conversation. Some of you going, no, I get it. I know what it looks like. I just had never done it. But I want to. Good. Tell one of us. We'll be singing in a minute. Man, Peter will be down here. Just come see him. I'm going to walk up and down the aisle. Just flag me over and I'll connect you with somebody. And we'll do that. If you're thinking, I really can't help anybody else get to Jesus because to tell you the truth, I'm here. I'm kind of a crowd guy. I'm not really a disciple. You know what? Today's the day to come home. It's a great day to come home. It's a great day to get a group of us around you, to pray for your spiritual journey, to pray for your addiction battle. you know what, we're in this together. Tell us. I promise you, the leadership here, we have been where you are. Or somebody we love dearly has been exactly where you are. We will love you. We will walk beside you. We will speak truth into your life. We will do this together. And if you've said, hey, man, this message, I know people need this. Great. Go tell them. Can I talk to you about the Jesus journey and tell them the story of Bartimaeus, who screamed loud enough to recognize that Jesus was calling him and followed him all the way to the cross and into heaven. Let's stand together and sing.